We are the clay. He is the potter. That simple truth from Isaiah 64:8 echoes across the generations like a gentle whisper from heaven. In those words, there is comfort and confrontation, tenderness and tension. Comfort because it tells us we are in the hands of a loving Creator. Confrontation because it reminds us we are not the ones shaping our own lives. We are not the potter. We are the clay. Have you ever held a lump of clay in your hands? It's cold, shapeless, unremarkable. But when a potter begins to work with it, pressing, stretching, folding, it slowly becomes something of purpose. A vessel, a design, a reflection of the artist's intent. Yet before the shaping, there is often breaking. Maybe today you feel like that unformed clay. Or worse, you were once a vessel, but now you're broken. Pieces scattered, dreams dashed, a heart cracked by disappointment, grief, or failure. If that's where you are, hear me. God is not done with you. Your brokenness is not the end of your story. It's the beginning of His masterpiece. Isaiah's image of the potter and the clay is not just a poetic metaphor. It is the story of every soul who has come to the end of themselves and placed their fragments into the hands of God. It is the cry of a people who have sinned, fallen, and found grace. It is the reality that transformation begins not when we take control, but when we surrender. And surrender is hard. In Romans 9:20, Paul confronts our resistance. But who are you, a human being, to talk back to God? Shall what is formed say to the one who formed it, "Why did you make me like this?" That verse stings a little, doesn't it? It touches a nerve because we often want to bargain with God, to understand before we obey, to critique the process before we yield to the hand that shapes us. But the clay doesn't protest the potter, not if it trusts him. And here is the paradox of grace. The more broken we are, the more usable we become in the hands of God. It is not our strength that makes us beautiful. It is His touch, His shaping, His vision for who we can be when we stop resisting and start surrendering. Maybe you've been through a season of crushing. Maybe you've felt the wheel spinning beneath you and the pressure of unseen hands pressing into your soul. It can feel chaotic. It can feel like loss. But friend, what if it's love? What if the pressure is actually preparation? God doesn't shape us with cruelty. He shapes us with care. He knows the weight of your wounds. He sees the questions you've buried under polite prayers. He hears the silent, "Why, Lord?" whispered when the night is long and hope feels far. And He still chooses you. He still picks up the clay of your life and says, "I'm not finished." You see, we often come to God hoping He will fix us, but He doesn't merely fix, He reforms. He recreates. He starts from the inside out, smoothing the rough places, softening the hardened corners, and pressing the gospel deep into our being. And yes, sometimes that shaping hurts, because it touches the brokenness we've tried to hide, the control we're afraid to release, the shame we've carried too long. But the potter's hands are kind. There's a tenderness in the touch of God. He doesn't discard what is marred. He molds it. He doesn't reject the flawed. He refashions it. In the hands of God, our story of brokenness becomes a testimony of grace. Not because we were strong, because He is. I've walked through seasons where I wanted to question the shaping. I've pleaded for God to stop the spinning wheel, to let me catch my breath, to explain what He was doing. And yet, looking back, I see it clearly. The seasons of greatest pressure were the seasons of deepest purpose. He wasn't punishing me, He was preparing me. He was forming something.
The prophet Isaiah,
in chapter 64, is crying out in desperation. God's people had drifted. Sin had hardened their hearts. Judgment had come. And yet, amid the ashes of consequence, Isaiah doesn't just ask for forgiveness, he asks for formation. But now, O Lord, you are our Father. We are the clay and you are our potter. We are all the work of your hand. This is not a passive cry. It is a prayer of surrender, a declaration of identity, a reminder that even in their failure, God's people still belonged to Him. That same truth holds for you and me. We are not abandoned clay, we are chosen clay. Crafted, not discarded. Formed, not forsaken. Even when we've made a mess of things, even when our lives feel cracked and useless, the potter has not given up. Think of Jeremiah, another prophet, who was sent by God to a potter's house to receive a message. I saw him working at the wheel, Jeremiah recounts, but the pot he was shaping from the clay was marred in his hands. So the potter formed it into another pot, shaping it as seemed best to him. Do you see the grace in that image? The potter didn't throw the clay away. He didn't walk out in frustration. He reworked it. What hope that brings to our brokenness. God is not intimidated by what has marred us. The betrayal you suffered, the failure that haunts you, the weakness you can't seem to overcome, none of it disqualifies you from His hands. In fact, those very marks may be the starting point of your reformation. But we have to stop resisting the wheel. That's the tension Paul addresses in Romans 9:20 when he rebukes the heart that argues with God. Shall what is formed say to the one who formed it, "Why did you make me like this?" It's a rhetorical question with real implications. When we resist His shaping, we miss His purpose. When we question His process, we delay our transformation. Friend, God is not cruel in His design. He is deliberate. He knows what kind of vessel you are becoming. He sees not only who you are, but who you are becoming in Him. Some of us want to be strong bowls, sturdy, practical, unnoticed. Others want to be delicate vases, beautiful, admired, displayed. But God may be shaping you into a pitcher, something that pours, something that empties itself to fill others. And that shaping requires surrender. Can I be honest with you? There are parts of my own life I would not have chosen. Seasons of grief I would have skipped. Weaknesses I prayed away. But over time, I've seen how God used those very things to form something deeper in me. Compassion, patience, dependence. Not traits I would have picked on my own, but gifts I now treasure. And I wonder, what is He forming in you? Maybe He's pressing you through financial strain, not to punish, but to teach you provision comes from Him. Maybe He's allowing relational brokenness, not to isolate you, but to lead you into deeper communion with Him. Maybe the delay you're living through is not a denial, but a preparation for something you aren't ready to carry yet. The potter sees the end from the beginning. We only see the spinning. It's no accident that shaping clay involves pressure and rotation. The wheel turns and the potter's hands stay steady. From the clay's point of view, it feels like spinning, like confusion. But the potter isn't spinning the clay to disorient it, he's doing it to center it. The spinning actually stabilizes the clay, allowing for symmetrical shaping. Have you ever felt like your life was spinning out of control? That may be the moment when you're actually being centered by God. He hasn't stepped back, He's leaning in. And that pressure you feel, that's the loving hand of the potter. He presses not to crush, but to form. He applies force in just the right measure, at just the right moment, to bring out the design. He knows where to press and where to pull. He knows when to pause and when to push. And above all, he knows the purpose of what he's making. You are not random. Your life is not a mistake. Your story is not too broken to be redeemed. So let me ask again, what brokenness are you letting him touch today? What area of your life have you kept from his hands, afraid of the shaping, uncertain of the outcome? Bring it to the wheel. Let him press into the wounds that still ache. Let him stretch the faith that feels fragile. Let him smooth the anger, the fear, the shame. He's not finished with you. He's just getting started.
Some years ago, I visited a local pottery studio tucked away in the hills of North Carolina. The potter, an older man with weathered hands and a quiet, steady presence, was working at his wheel. I stood for a while just watching him. He didn't speak much, but his hands told a story. I watched as he took a lump of clay, gray, lumpy, unassuming, and centered it on the wheel. Water dripped from his fingers as he pressed and pulled and shaped the mound. With every spin, a new curve formed. What once looked like nothing slowly became a vase, elegant and strong. But then something unexpected happened. Just as the vessel began to take shape, the potter stopped the wheel. He noticed a small flaw, barely visible to me but obvious to him. With a quiet sigh, he collapsed the piece and began again. I flinched at the sight, all that work undone in a second. He must have seen the concern on my face because he smiled and said gently, "Sometimes you have to start over, not because the clay is useless, but because the shape it's taking won't last. It needs more time on the wheel." That moment has stayed with me. Friend, maybe you feel like your life has been collapsed on the wheel. A relationship ended. A dream was shattered. A direction you were certain of suddenly changed. It feels like failure. It looks like loss. But what if it's actually grace? What if the potter knows the shape wouldn't hold? What if he saw a weakness in the wall that you couldn't see and chose to begin again? That's not rejection. That's redemption. The truth is, we often want the final product without the full process. We want to be the beautiful vessel without the refining. But there is no shortcut to glory. God is not in a rush. He is forming something eternal in us, something that can carry His presence, pour His love, reflect His beauty. And yes, that shaping includes breaking. Isaiah's declaration still echoes. We are the clay, you are our potter, not just in seasons of growth, but in seasons of loss. Not just when we feel useful, but when we feel undone. And Romans reminds us to hush our resistance, to trust the hands that formed the stars and now press gently into the soil of our hearts. So, what does surrender look like today? It might mean praying a risky prayer. Lord, shape me, even if it hurts. It might mean laying down a dream you've gripped too tightly. It might mean forgiving someone who wounded you, or admitting you're not as strong as you pretend to be. The potter doesn't demand perfection. He asks for surrender. And in that surrender, the shaping begins. Quietly, faithfully, lovingly. I don't know what part of your life feels most broken right now, but I do know this. There is no piece too shattered for God to shape. There is no clay too marred for His hands, and there is no life too far gone to be made new. Let Him touch that place, that wound you've hidden, that failure you replay, that fear that paralyzes. Offer it to Him. Whisper it through trembling lips. Place it on the wheel. And then, wait. Feel the wheel turn. Feel his hands press. Listen for his voice saying, "You are mine. I am not finished." He is shaping something in you that will outlast every storm. A vessel of honor, a heart of resilience, a life that reflects the beauty of the one who shapes it. So, I ask one last time, as he shapes, what brokenness are you letting him touch today? Don't wait until you feel ready. Come as you are. The potter's hands are already waiting. If the image of the potter's hands on fragile clay stirred something in your heart, I invite you to subscribe to the channel now. Each week, we'll continue this journey from brokenness towards wholeness, and I'd love for you to receive the next devotional the moment it's released.
We live in a world obsessed with perfection. Social media filters, polished presentations, airbrushed lives. We've all been conditioned to hide our cracks, to cover our pain, to pretend we have it all together, even when we're barely holding on. But God sees through all of that, and more than that, He works through it. Paul's words in 2 Corinthians 4:7 strike like lightning in the dark. But we have this treasure in jars of clay to show that the surpassing power belongs to God and not to us. Did you catch that? We carry divine treasure in fragile vessels, in cracked pots, in broken containers. That's not a flaw. That's the design. Our humanity, with all its weakness, is not an obstacle to God's glory. It's the stage for it. The cracks are not the disqualification. They're the very places where His light shines through. But let's be honest, we don't like our cracks. We want to be strong, steady, impressive. We want others to look at our lives and see success, not struggle. We want to be the kind of people who always have the right answer, always know what to do, always land on their feet. But Scripture doesn't call us to be superheroes. It calls us to be vessels. And vessels crack. Sometimes it's the crack of grief, losing someone too soon, too suddenly. Sometimes it's the crack of betrayal, trust shattered by someone you loved. Sometimes it's the slow crack of exhaustion, serving faithfully, quietly, until your soul starts to dry out. Other times it's failure, shame, depression, fear. Life has a way of putting pressure on our walls, and eventually, something gives. You know what that feels like, don't you? You've had moments when the image cracked, when your prayers turned to groans, when all the strength you could muster was just enough to whisper, "Lord, help me." And maybe that's where you are today. Not together, but undone. Not confident, but broken. Not strong, but cracked. If so, you're in the right place. Because cracked vessels are exactly where God does His best work. Psalm 34:18 promises something so tender, it almost hurts to believe. The Lord is near to the brokenhearted and saves the crushed in spirit. Not the polished, not the perfect. The broken, the crushed, the cracked. Those are the ones who get closest to the heart of God. Why? Because when we're broken, we stop pretending. We stop performing. We stop trying to earn what only grace can give. And in that surrender, we make room for the light to shine. You see, God's light doesn't bounce off the polished surface of a perfect life. It shines through the cracks of a surrendered one. The early church knew this well. Paul, the great apostle, didn't boast about his strength. He boasted in his weakness. He didn't hide his suffering. He held it up as a backdrop for God's power. We are afflicted in every way, but not crushed, perplexed, but not driven to despair, persecuted, but not forsaken, struck down, but not destroyed. He's not minimizing the pain. He's naming it. And yet through it all, he declares there's a power greater than the pressure. There's a glory bigger than the grief. There's a treasure shining through the cracks. And friend, that same treasure is in you. So let's ask the question honestly.
What crack in your heart needs God's light right now? What wound are you hiding behind smiles? What struggle are you managing in silence? What part of you have you labeled too broken for God to use? Bring it to Him. Don't try to glue it together first. Don't try to make it presentable. Come as you are, cracked, chipped, fragile. Because the potter already knows where you're broken, and His light is ready to shine through. Let's linger a little longer in Paul's words, because they are not abstract theology. They are born out of suffering, real, relentless, bruise and pain. We are afflicted in every way, he says, not just occasionally, not just when it's convenient, in every way. And yet, not crushed, perplexed, but not driven to despair, struck down, but not destroyed. How? How does a man endure so much and still stand firm? The answer is in the treasure, the glory of God, the presence of Christ, the power of the Holy Spirit. All of that lives in fragile vessels like us. But we forget that sometimes, don't we? We try to live as if the power is our own, as if we must hold it all together, as if the cracks disqualify us. But Paul flips that on its head. The cracks are not the problem, they are the pathway. Without them, the treasure would be hidden. Without them, the world would see us, not Christ. Without them, we would remain self-reliant instead of spirit-dependent. And that changes everything. Think of Gideon. In Judges 7, he faced a massive enemy with a tiny army, but God instructed him to do something strange. Instead of charging into battle with weapons, Gideon's men carried torches inside clay jars. And when the moment came, they shattered those jars. Only then did the light blaze forth and throw the enemy into confusion. The victory didn't come in spite of the broken jars. It came through them. That's what happens when your vessel cracks. The enemy trembles because he knows the power you carry isn't yours, it's God's. And every time you choose to worship through your pain, to trust through your doubt, to serve through your weariness, light breaks through the fracture. You may not feel like it right now. You may feel weak, wounded, spent, but heaven sees the cracks as sacred. I remember sitting across from a woman in our church, tears falling into her lap. Her husband had walked away, the future was uncertain, and all she could say was, "I don't know how I'll make it." But in that moment, I saw something radiant. Not because she was strong, but because she wasn't pretending. Her eyes were red, her voice was thin, but her heart was wide open to God. And in her honesty, there was a kind of beauty that no filter could fake. She was a cracked vessel, and the light of Christ was shining through. That's what people notice most, not your success, but your surrender. Not your victories, but your vulnerability. And let me tell you, beloved, that kind of honesty is rare in the world, but precious in the kingdom. Psalm 34:18 doesn't say the Lord pities the brokenhearted. It says He is near to them. There is a closeness in suffering that we often miss when life is easy. God draws near to the shattered places, not just to comfort, but to shine. And His light doesn't merely illuminate the brokenness, it transforms it. Think of Peter. After denying Jesus 3 times, he wept bitterly. That crack in his soul could have ended his ministry. But Jesus came to him, not with condemnation, but with restoration. "Do you love me?" Jesus asked. Not once, but 3 times. Not to shame Peter, but to seal him with purpose. From that place of brokenness, Peter stood on the day of Pentecost and preached with fire. The same man who cracked under pressure became a vessel of revival. That's what God does with cracked vessels. He uses them, not in spite of the cracks, but because of them. So what about you? What crack in your heart is God ready to shine through? Maybe it's time to stop patching it. Maybe it's time to stop hiding it. Maybe, just maybe, that's the very place God wants to reveal His glory. You don't have to be perfect to carry the light. You just have to be open.
In Japan, there is an ancient art form called kintsugi. When a piece of pottery breaks, the artisan doesn't throw it away. Instead, they repair it with a special lacquer mixed with powdered gold. The cracks are not hidden, they are highlighted. The broken lines gleam with gold, telling a story of resilience and beauty. The philosophy behind kintsugi is this: brokenness is part of the object's history, and instead of disguising it, the restoration becomes its most striking feature. The repaired vessel is more valuable than it was before it broke. That's what God does with us. He doesn't discard us when we're shattered. He doesn't sweep up the pieces and hide the pain. No, He gathers every fragment with gentleness, mends us with mercy, and fills our cracks with glory. The gospel is not about hiding our story, it's about redeeming it. And the golden light that fills our fractures, that's Christ. He's the treasure in the jar, the radiance in the ruin, the hope in the heartbreak, the power in our weakness. He's the reason we don't give up, even when we're breaking. Paul goes on in 2 Corinthians 4 to say, "So we do not lose heart. Though our outer self is wasting away, our inner self is being renewed day by day." He doesn't deny the wear and tear of life. He acknowledges it. But then he adds perspective. This light momentary affliction is preparing for us an eternal weight of glory beyond all comparison. Affliction may crack you, but glory is coming. That's not just a future promise, it's a present reality. Every crack you carry is a potential window for the world to see the light of Christ. Every scar is a testimony. Every fracture, a portal for grace. But to shine, we must surrender. We must stop hiding the cracks. Because the world doesn't need more perfect people. It needs more real ones, honest ones. People who bleed and hope at the same time. People who say, "Yes, I've been broken, but grace held me together." People who don't pretend to have it all figured out, but cling to the one who does. Is that you? Maybe you've been trying to be whole on your own. Maybe you've been ashamed of the cracks in your story. Maybe you've believed the lie that your brokenness makes you unusable. But listen closely. The crack is not the end of you. It's the beginning of something new. Jesus was broken so you could be made whole. His body cracked on the cross. His life poured out for ours. And now in Him, every broken piece of your heart can be filled with eternal gold. Forgiveness, restoration, redemption, healing, and hope. Hope that shines through the cracks. So today, I leave you with a question not to rush past, but to carry with you. What crack in your heart needs God's light right now? Bring it into His presence. Let Him pour in the gold of grace. Let Him make your story a beacon of His glory. The light is ready. The cracks are sacred. The vessel is you.
Some mornings, mercy feels like the only thing keeping us breathing. You know those mornings. When the weight of yesterday still lingers. When regret echoes louder than your alarm clock. When you wake up and wonder, can I really keep going? It's in those moments that the words of Lamentations 3 whisper like a sunrise to the soul. The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. New every morning. That promise isn't for the perfect. It's not a reward for the strong. It's mercy, freely poured out for the broken, the weary, the ones barely making it through the night. Mercy for you. Mercy for me. And this mercy doesn't dripple. It pours. We often think of mercy as a drip, a ration, something we have to qualify for. But the gospel tells another story. Ephesians 2 says it plain. But God, being rich in mercy, because of the great love with which he loved us, made us alive together with Christ. Rich in mercy, not stingy, not reluctant, not calculating how much to give us. Rich. God isn't managing a tight budget of grace. He's extravagant. And what makes this mercy so powerful isn't just how much he gives, but when he gives it. Ephesians reminds us that this mercy came when we were dead in our trespasses, not when we were improving, not when we had cleaned ourselves up, when we were dead, helpless, hopeless, completely unable to reach for him. And still, he poured mercy. Let that sink in. Before you ever whispered a prayer, before you felt 1 ounce of conviction, before you did anything good or godly, he had already decided to love you. That's mercy. That's the heart of the gospel. That's the God we run to. But what does it mean to live from that place of mercy? Too many of us carry our brokenness like a weight of shame. We believe God is disappointed. We fear he's watching with crossed arms, waiting for us to get it together. And when we fail, again, we withdraw. We wall off. We hide. But God doesn't meet our brokenness with shame. He meets it with mercy. The kind of mercy that stoops low, that kneels beside our mess, that wipes tears without judgment, that lifts the chin of the ashamed and says, "You are still mine." I don't know what guilt you're carrying today. I don't know what past moment replays in your mind when you try to pray. But I do know this. Mercy is being poured out over it right now. Not because you deserve it, but because he delights to give it. So here's the question only you can answer. How ready is your heart to receive his merciful grace? Not understand it, not explain it, not earn it. Just receive it. Because until we learn to receive mercy, we can't begin to live from it. And until we live from it, we'll never pour it out.
Let's lean deeper into the truth of Ephesians 2. Paul writes with a kind of breathtaking clarity, but God being rich in mercy. Those words change everything, because the verses just before them paint a dark picture. We were dead. We were enslaved to sin. We were following the course of this world, driven by selfish desires, deserving wrath. And then, but God. That divine interruption turns the entire narrative around. Not, but you tried harder. Not, but you cleaned up. Just this, but God. Because only he could intervene. Only he could reach into the tomb of our souls and breathe life. Only he could see the mess we were in and choose freely, gladly to rescue us. That's the power of mercy. And mercy doesn't just forgive, it revives. It brings dead things back to life. It doesn't just patch up what's broken, it resurrects what was lost. That's what Paul means when he says, made us alive together with Christ. God didn't wait for you to improve. He poured out mercy in your worst moment. That's hard for some of us to believe. We've spent years trying to clean the vessel. We've adopted the language of grace, but function in fear. We read about mercy, but we don't live from it. We hustle for holiness. We measure our prayers. We try to prove we're worth saving. But God never asked for that. He asked for surrender. Mercy isn't a transaction, it's a gift. And the only way to receive a gift is to open your hands, to admit need, to say, I can't fix myself. I can't climb out of this. I need you. And when we do, the floodgates of heaven open. Mercy pours out, not just to cleanse, but to cover. Not just to pardon, but to empower. Remember the woman caught in adultery? Dragged into the temple courts by religious men with stones in their hands. The law said she deserved death. The people demanded judgment. And Jesus, he knelt in the dust. He didn't rush to speak. He didn't argue with their accusations. He stooped low. And then, with quiet authority, he said, "Let him who is without sin cast the first stone." The stones dropped. One by one, her accusers vanished, and when the dust settled, only mercy remained. "Neither do I condemn you," Jesus said. "Go and sin no more." That's what mercy does.
It silences shame. It lifts us from the dirt. It frees us from the voice of the accuser, and it calls us to live differently, not out of fear, but from freedom. We are never the same after an encounter with real mercy. And yet, so often we struggle to believe it's really for us. I once sat with a man whose past was marked by addiction, betrayal, and regret. He had heard the gospel 100 times. He could quote the verses. But he looked me in the eye and said, "I just don't think God's mercy applies to people like me." That's the lie of the enemy, that mercy is for them, for the clean, for the faithful, for those who haven't blown it too bad. But the truth is, mercy was made for people like us, for the prodigals, the liars, the angry, the addicted, the ashamed, for those who carry the weight of secret sins and public failures. That's who Jesus came for. And if mercy can reach down to us when we were dead in our sins, it can surely meet us now in our struggle, in our stumble, in our questions. You may feel empty, but God's mercy is overflowing. You may feel unworthy, but His mercy is unwavering. You may feel too far gone, but His mercy runs further still. So the question lingers: how ready is your heart to receive His merciful grace? Because that's where healing begins, not with doing, with receiving.
There's a story told in an old village about a cracked pitcher. Each morning, a servant would walk to the river with 2 clay pitchers hanging on a pole over his shoulders. One pitcher was perfect, no blemishes, no leaks. The other was cracked. By the time the servant returned home, the cracked pitcher had lost half its water. Years went by. The perfect pitcher grew proud, and the cracked one grew ashamed. One day, the cracked pitcher spoke up. "I'm sorry," it said. "I'm broken. I leak. I fail you every time." But the servant smiled and said, "Have you noticed the flowers on your side of the path? I planted seeds, and every day as we walked, you watered them. I knew your cracks, and I used them." That's mercy. God doesn't just fix us, He uses us, cracks and all. He plants beauty through our brokenness. He waters others with the overflow of the grace we've received. And when we receive mercy deeply, we begin to pour it out. We become people who forgive quickly because we've been forgiven much. We offer patience because we remember our own weakness. We lift others without judgment because we know what it's like to be lifted ourselves. Mercy flows from the heart that knows it didn't earn a thing. This is the rhythm of the gospel. Receive mercy, live from mercy, pour out mercy. Lamentations 3 doesn't say God's mercies are occasionally available. It says they're new every morning. Every sunrise carries a fresh supply. Every breath is proof that He hasn't given up on you. Every moment soaked in grace. And Ephesians 2 reminds us that mercy isn't something God doles out reluctantly. It's the overflow of His love. Because of the great love with which He loved us. That's the why behind the mercy. Love. So today, if you feel like you're coming to God empty, come anyway. If your heart is numb, if your thoughts are scattered, if shame sits heavy on your shoulders, come anyway. Don't wait until you feel worthy. That's the lie that keeps us stuck. Come as you are, cracks and all. Mercy is not a reward for the healed, it's the remedy for the hurting. And when you receive it, when you let that mercy pour deep into your weary soul, it changes you. Not all at once, not overnight, but little by little the shame melts. The striving quiets, the heart softens, the hands open, and before long you find yourself pouring out what you could never manufacture on your own. Mercy received becomes mercy given. So today, beloved, hear this truth again. His mercies are new for you right now. Not because you're good, because He is. And so I ask, gently, once more, how ready is your heart to receive His merciful grace? Don't resist, don't delay. Just open your hands. The pitcher may be cracked, but the stream is endless.
Some fires are meant to destroy. Others are meant to refine. And when God allows the fire in our lives, it is never to burn us down. It is to burn away what doesn't belong. His fire doesn't consume his children, it purifies them. It is a fire of love. But if we're honest, fire still feels like pain. You may be walking through it right now. Heat pressing from every side, trials that seem unrelenting, questions that outnumber answers. And you're asking what every soul asks when it stands in the flames. God, where are you in this? That's exactly the cry Malachi answers. In chapter 3, the prophet declares that the Lord will come like a refiner's fire and like fuller's soap. He will sit as a refiner and purifier of silver. Malachi 3:2-3. The image is vivid. The Lord isn't pacing, he's sitting. Intentional, patient, focused, watching the silver as it heats. Refining is a process of precision. The silversmith knows exactly how long to keep the metal in the flame. Too little time, and the impurities remain. Too much, and the silver is damaged. So he sits, eyes fixed, hands ready, heart steady. That's how God handles your fire. He doesn't step away. He doesn't look away. He sits with you in it, and he knows exactly when to lift you out. But make no mistake, refining still hurts. Peter echoes this in the New Testament. Writing to believers who were suffering, he says, "Now for a little while you may have had to suffer grief in all kinds of trials. These have come so that the proven genuineness of your faith may result in praise, glory, and honor when Jesus Christ is revealed." Did you catch that? These have come. Your trial is not random. Your suffering is not wasted. There is a refining happening, a faith being forged, a glory being prepared. But the fire is still fire. And sometimes all you can do is stand in the heat and hope that something holy is happening. Sometimes all you have is the promise that the refiner sees you. And that's enough. Because you are not alone in this furnace. There is one whose eyes are on you, whose hands are steady, whose heart is full of mercy. He sits not to watch you burn, but to see you shine. So I ask you gently, as you stand in your own trial, in what area of your life is God applying his refining fire? Where do you feel the heat right now? The pressure, the purging? Don't rush past it. Don't waste it. Let the fire do its holy work. Because on the other side of this fire is something pure, something beautiful, something eternal.
Peter's audience knew fire. They lived in the pressure cooker of persecution. Rome was tightening its grip. Their faith wasn't a matter of convenience, it was a cost. They were scattered, misunderstood, marginalized, and still Peter wrote to them, not with panic, but with perspective. These trials, he says, have come so that your faith, of greater worth than gold, may be proved genuine. Gold doesn't fear fire, it welcomes it. Because only in fire is gold refined. Only through intense heat are the impurities drawn out. The dross rises, the metal softens, the essence shines. And Peter is saying that's what God is doing in you. Your trial is not God abandoning you, it is God perfecting you. Not by comfort, but by fire. Now, I know that can sound harsh, maybe even cruel, but listen carefully. God is not a passive observer of your pain. He is the refiner, which means he is actively involved in your process, not from a distance, but up close. The image Malachi uses is stunning. God sits as a refiner of silver. The fire is burning, the silver is in the crucible, but the refiner is not standing off, distracted, or hurried. He sits, he watches, he waits for just the right moment. And how does a silversmith know the silver is pure? When he can see his reflection in it.
That's what God is looking for in you. Not just endurance, not just survival, reflection. He is burning away what's false, what's selfish, what's temporary, so that Christ may be seen in you. And that process isn't quick, it isn't easy, but it is holy. I remember walking with a friend through the fire of cancer. The diagnosis came like lightning, and the treatment left her body frail. But her faith burned brighter than ever. One night, after a particularly hard day, she looked at me and said, "I never knew I could feel this much pain and this much peace all at once." That's what refining does. It doesn't remove the fire. It reveals God in the fire. Just ask Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Thrown into a furnace for refusing to bow to an idol, bound, condemned, engulfed in flames. And yet the king looked and saw a fourth figure, one like the son of the gods, walking with them in the fire, Daniel 3. They came out untouched by the flames. Not even the smell of smoke clung to them. And why? Because Jesus stood with them in the fire. That same Jesus stands with you. Not just above the fire, not just beyond the fire, in the fire. He is not intimidated by the heat. He's Lord over it, and he will not let it consume you. Isaiah 43 promises it. When you walk through the fire, you shall not be burned, and the flame shall not consume you. So, hold on, friend. Don't fear the heat. Don't curse the flames. You are being refined, not ruined, and when this fire has done its work, you will come forth as gold.
Years ago, I visited a blacksmith shop tucked in the corner of a rural town. It was small, cluttered, thick with the smell of metal and smoke. I watched as the blacksmith worked a piece of iron over the fire. He heated it until it glowed, then pulled it from the coals and struck it with rhythmic blows, again and again, shaping it into a blade. The metals sizzled, sparks flew, the hammer rang. I asked him if the process ever damaged the steel. He smiled and said, "Not if I know what I'm doing. The fire makes it flexible. The hammer gives it form. But the steel is never left in the fire too long. It would ruin the blade. Timing is everything." That stayed with me, because it's not just a picture of blacksmithing, it's a picture of God's refining work in our lives. He is not careless with your pain. He is not random with your trials. He is deliberate, measured, and deeply personal. He knows how long you can bear it. He knows when to pull you from the flames. And his goal is not to hurt you, but to shape you. That shaping may come through heartbreak, through loss, through seasons of silence, through nights where prayers feel unanswered. But the refiner has not left the room. He is watching, he is working, he is with you. And his goal is not to hurt you, but to shape you. That shaping may come through heartbreak, through loss, through seasons of silence, through nights where prayers feel unanswered. But the refiner has not left the room. He is watching, he is working, he is with you. And he's not forming just any vessel, he's forming one that reflects his glory. Malachi says the Lord will purify the sons of Levi and refine them like gold and silver. The sons of Levi were priests, those set apart for worship. That means this refining fire is not just about making you stronger, it's about making you sacred. God is purifying your heart so you can carry his presence. That's why Peter says these trials will result in praise, glory, and honor when Jesus Christ is revealed. Not just someday in heaven, but even now, in the daily revealing of Christ through your life. The fire makes that possible. So where are you feeling the heat? Is it in your relationships, your finances, your mental health, your ministry, your sense of purpose? Wherever the flames are licking close, wherever the pressure feels intense, know this: God is not trying to destroy you. He's drawing the impurities out. He's shaping what's eternal. He's preparing a vessel fit for glory. And you are not alone. He sits beside you in the fire.
His hand is on the thermostat. His eye is on your soul. And his promise still stands. When you walk through the fire, you will not be burned. So I ask you once more, in what area of your life is God applying his refining fire? Don't resist it. Don't fear it. Lean into it. Let it purify, not petrify. Let it burn away what was never meant to stay. Let it forge a faith that shines brighter than gold. Because when the flames pass, you will not come out empty. You will come out radiant.
There's a strange kind of trust that only grows in deep waters. It's one thing to believe in God when your feet are planted on solid ground, when life feels manageable, predictable, and safe. But what happens when he calls you out onto the waves? What happens when he asks you to trust, not with explanations, but with surrender? Psalm 107 speaks of such a moment. It tells of those who go down to the sea in ships, who do business on great waters. These are the brave, the willing, the risk-takers, people who launch into the unknown. And at first, it sounds thrilling. But then, the storm comes. They saw the works of the Lord, his wondrous deeds in the deep. For he commanded and raised the stormy wind. Did you catch that? He raised the storm. Not the enemy, not bad luck, God. That shakes us, doesn't it? Because we prefer a God who calms storms, not one who commands them. But Scripture doesn't flinch at this tension. God is not only present in the storm, he's sovereign over it. And why would he allow the waves? Psalm 107 tells us their courage melted away. They reeled and staggered like drunken men and were at their wits' end. Then they cried to the Lord in their trouble, and he delivered them from their distress. Sometimes God leads us into deep waters, not to drown us, but to draw us to the end of ourselves, to the place where we stop steering and start surrendering, to the moment when we stop relying on our own strength and cry out, "Lord, save me." Peter knew that moment. Matthew 14 tells us that when the disciples were caught in a storm, Jesus came walking on the water. At first they were terrified, thinking it was a ghost, but then he speaks, and Peter answers with a wild, beautiful kind of faith. "Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water." Jesus says one word, "Come," and Peter steps out. Can you imagine the faith it took to lift that foot over the edge of the boat, to place your weight on water? That's what trust looks like. Not belief in theory, but obedience in motion. And for a moment, it worked. Peter walked. But then the wind howled, the waves surged, and Peter's eyes drifted from Jesus to the storm. Fear flooded in. He began to sink. And what did Jesus do? He didn't scold. He didn't withdraw. He reached. Immediately, Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. "Oh, you of little faith, why did you doubt?" Friend, maybe you're walking through deep water right now. Maybe the waves are crashing, and the wind is howling, and you're not sure if your faith can hold. Maybe you've taken the step, and now you feel like you're sinking. If so, hear this. You are not alone. Jesus is near, and his hand is not slow to reach you. So I ask, where are you currently walking on water in faith? What area of your life feels uncertain, unsteady, unsafe? That's where trust is born. That's where grace flows. That's where Jesus meets you, not just on the shore, but in the storm.
Let's revisit the boat, the wind, the water, and Peter trembling on the waves. He had the courage to step out, and yet he still began to sink. Isn't that comforting in a strange way? Even the boldest faith can falter. Even those who walk toward Jesus can stumble. But here's the grace. Faltering faith is still faith. Jesus didn't wait for Peter to fix himself. He didn't watch him sink and say, "You should have believed more." He reached down immediately. That word matters. Immediately. Before Peter could say another word. Before he could pray the right prayer. before he could fix his gaze again. Because Jesus is not just the God of the miraculous, he is the God of the immediate. He sees you, he moves toward you, and he rescues, not because your faith is flawless, but because his love is. We often think faith means walking on water without fear, but real faith is crying out in the middle of sinking. It's gasping, "Lord, save me," when you've got nothing else. And sometimes that desperate reach is the truest act of trust. So if you are in the deep right now, don't wait until you feel brave. Call out. Let the waves remind you that you need him. Let the sinking lead you into his arms. Psalm 107 makes this point crystal clear. The sailors didn't find peace by navigating better, they found it by crying out. Then they cried to the Lord in their trouble, and he delivered them from their distress. Not after they had it together, not once they proved their worth, but in the middle of panic they cried, and God delivered. Friend, maybe that's the invitation today, to stop trying to steer your own ship, to stop pretending the water's not rising, to cry out, not as a last resort, but as a holy surrender. Because the deeper the water, the louder grace echoes. And sometimes, the greatest miracle isn't walking on water. It's not drowning when you thought you would. It's finding that when your faith gave out, his grip did not. I remember walking with someone through a season of grief so heavy it felt suffocating. She said, "I don't even know how to pray anymore." I told her, "You don't have to. Jesus is already reaching." And he is, right now, reaching into your storm, into your doubt, into your overwhelmed heart. Not to condemn, but to catch. That's who he is. So don't be afraid of the deep. Don't fear the dark beneath your feet. The same waters that frighten you are the ones where Jesus walks. He's not limited by the laws of nature. He's not bound by your understanding. He meets you in places that defy explanation. But he asks for one thing, your trust. Not your strength, not your perfection, your trust. Peter's step wasn't perfect, but it was enough. So where is God asking you to step? What waters is he calling you into? It may not look dramatic. It may be forgiving someone who wounded you, saying yes to a hard conversation, walking into counseling, letting go of a plan you've clung to. These are the waves where faith is tested, and that's where Jesus is.
There's a phrase sailors use when navigating uncertain seas. Trust your compass. When visibility disappears, when the sky and sea blur, when instinct screams one thing, but the compass says another, you trust the compass because it doesn't lie. It's grounded in something unseen but true. That's what faith is in deep waters. Trusting the compass when your senses scream fear. Trusting the word of Christ even when the waves threaten to swallow you. Peter had a compass that night. It was Jesus' voice saying, "Come." That word was enough to hold him above the impossible. And even when fear pulled him under, grace pulled him up. So often we think of faith as the absence of fear. But real faith is walking through fear, fixing your eyes not on the wind, but on the one who commands it. Psalm 107 ends with a beautiful promise. He made the storm be still, and the waves of the sea were hushed. Then they were glad that the waters were quiet, and he brought them to their desired haven. That's the goal, not just survival, but safe arrival. God doesn't leave you drifting. He brings you home. And in the process, he deepens your trust. Because trust is born in deep places. It grows when your strength runs out and your cry goes up. It anchors when all else gives way. And it carries you not because you held tightly to him, but because he never let go of you. I don't know what waters you're in right now.
Maybe they're financial, relational, emotional. Maybe God has called you into something that feels way beyond your depth. Maybe you said yes, and now you feel like you're drowning. Let me remind you, He is near, and His hand is strong. You don't have to have it all figured out. You don't have to prove anything. Just keep your eyes on Jesus. Keep your ears tuned to His voice. And when you start to sink, cry out. That cry is not weakness, it's worship. Because Jesus meets you on the water, and He brings peace that no storm can take away. So let me ask you again, where are you currently walking on water in faith? Don't shrink back. Don't retreat to the boat. Trust the voice that called you. Trust the hand that holds you. Trust the one who commands the wind and waves and still walks straight into the storm for you. The waters may be deep, but His mercy is deeper still.
Darkness is disorienting. It blurs what was once clear. It silences the familiar. It magnifies fear. And sometimes life feels exactly like that, like walking in the dark, trying to take the next step when you can't even see your own feet. Maybe you felt it, the uncertainty after a loss, the ache of a broken relationship, the confusion of unanswered prayers. The road you were walking suddenly disappears into shadows, and you're left whispering, "God, where are you?" And then Scripture speaks into that very darkness. Your word is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path. Psalm 119, 105. Notice the simplicity of the promise. God doesn't promise a spotlight. He doesn't promise to light the entire journey at once. He gives a lamp, just enough light for the next step. Because faith isn't about having the whole map. It's about trusting the guide. And that lamp, that light, isn't just an abstract idea. It's a person. Jesus said in John 8:12, "I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life." He doesn't merely offer direction. He is the direction. He doesn't just give light, He is the light. Which means that even in your darkest season, you are never truly alone. Because light has come, not to shame you, not to blind you, but to lead you. And here's the beautiful, often uncomfortable truth. Sometimes it's our brokenness that lets the light shine brightest. Not the polished stories, not the tidy testimonies, but the cracked, honest, hard-won places. Those become lamps for others. Your broken story becomes a guidepost in someone else's night. Have you thought of that? That your pain, when surrendered, can become someone else's path? That your scars can shine? That your darkest season can carry someone else through theirs? Not because you're the hero, but because the light of Christ is reflecting through your wounds. And isn't that how the gospel works? Jesus, the light of the world, was broken for us, pierced, crushed, and from that place of suffering, salvation shone. His cross became the lamp that lights every road home. And now He says, you are the light of the world. Not because you shine on your own, but because He shines through you. So I ask you, how can your brokenness light the path for someone else? You don't have to have all the answers. You don't need a platform. Just a willingness to share the light you've been given, a flicker of hope in someone else's darkness. Because someone out there is walking a road you've already traveled, and your lamp might be just what they need.
Let's dwell a little longer in the image David gives us in Psalm 119, verse 105. Your word is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path. It's not just poetic, it's profoundly practical. In ancient times, travelers often carried small oil lamps to illuminate their steps. These lamps didn't flood the landscape with light. They offered just enough to see one step ahead. Not a mile, not even 100 yards, just the next footfall. That's how God leads us, one step at a time. We want floodlights. He gives us lamps. We want a roadmap. He gives us a relationship. And in this way, He teaches us not only to walk, but to trust. Because when you're following the light of the world, you don't need to know the whole plan. You just need to stay close to the one holding the lamp. That's why Jesus says in John 8:12, "Whoever follows me will not walk in darkness." But the key is that phrase, follows me. Light is given in motion. We don't get direction by standing still in fear, we get it by stepping forward in faith. Sometimes trembling, sometimes unsure, but always forward. The light of Christ moves as we move. It shines on the path as we walk it. And when we do, something beautiful happens. Our lives become a light for others. Jesus said it in Matthew 5, "You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden." That's not a command, it's a declaration. If Christ is in you, then light is in you. And if light is in you, it cannot be hidden. Even if you feel broken, especially if you feel broken, because brokenness has a way of diffusing the light. Like a cracked lantern casting scattered rays, our wounded stories can illuminate more than our strength ever could. Think about it. How often have you been comforted, not by their success, but by their struggle? Not by their answers, but by their honesty. We're drawn to people who bleed real. And in God's hands, your most painful chapter can become someone else's guiding light. I remember a man in our church who lost his son to suicide. The grief was unspeakable, the questions unending. But over time, that same man became a beacon for others walking through grief, not because he had answers, but because he knew the terrain. His brokenness became a light. He didn't quote verses like formulas. He sat in silence with people. He prayed without pretense, and somehow in his presence, others felt the presence of Christ. That's what happens when the light of Jesus shines through our wounds, but it starts with vulnerability. With saying, "I've been there," with letting people see the cracks, with sharing how the word lit your path, one tiny step at a time, with offering the same grace you once needed desperately. So let me ask again, how can your brokenness light the path for someone else? Maybe there's someone right now struggling in the same storm you once survived. Maybe your story could be their map. Maybe your scar could become their strength, not because you're the answer, but because you carry the light.
There's a story that has stayed with me for years. During World War II, as blackouts covered European cities to avoid air raids, some soldiers found themselves lost in a dense forest outside a bombed village. With no light and no compass, they stumbled in the dark, disoriented, desperate, and afraid. Then, far off in the distance, one soldier noticed a faint flicker. It was a single oil lamp burning in the window of a farmhouse. That flicker became their compass. They moved toward it slowly, cautiously, but with hope. That one small light, fragile, flickering, unimpressive, became their path home. And that's what you are, a flicker in someone's night, a fragile flame in the fog of fear. Not because you shine so brightly on your own, but because the light of the world has taken up residence in your cracked vessel. And when others see that light, they find hope. Jesus said, "Let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven." Matthew 5:16. Your light isn't for show. It's for guidance. It's not for applause. It's for direction. Someone is watching your life right now. Someone is walking behind you in the dark. They're searching for a sign that hope is real, that faith can endure,
that light still shines. And your story, yes, even your broken story, might be the light that helps them keep walking. Not because you have it all together, but because you've seen the light in your own night. So let your lamp burn. Let it burn in small ways, through compassion, honesty, a kind word, a testimony whispered in courage. Let it burn when you share how God met you in depression. Let it burn when you tell how He carried you through divorce, doubt, addiction, grief. Let your broken places shine with the beauty of Christ's presence. Because light doesn't need to be loud to be powerful. Even a flicker can guide someone home. So I ask you once more, how can your brokenness light the path for someone else? Don't underestimate your story. Don't hide your lamp. Someone is waiting, not for your perfection, but for your light. Let it shine. And as it shines, may others find their way to the one who is the light of the world, Jesus, our eternal flame in every dark place.
Wounds tell stories. They speak silently, yet powerfully, of battles fought and endured. Some wounds are visible, scars on skin, fractures in bones. Others are hidden deep within, emotional bruises, spiritual aches, the silent pain no one else sees. You may carry such wounds today. Maybe they're fresh, raw, still bleeding in some way. Or maybe they're old wounds, long buried, but still aching beneath the surface. Psalm 147:3 offers a tender promise. He heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds. Notice the imagery here. God doesn't just erase the pain instantly, He binds up the wounds. Like a loving physician, He wraps tender care around what's hurting, protects the fragile places, and patiently brings healing over time. It's not a rushed fix, it's an intimate tending. This verse invites us to rest in a God who is not distant or indifferent, but near and nurturing. And the promise doesn't stop there. Isaiah 61 verses 1 through 3 describes the Messiah's mission to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives, and to comfort all who mourn. Jesus came not just to save, but to heal, to tend the wounds we carry from sin, loss, and brokenness. He is the great physician, the tender healer. But what does it mean to be tended by God? To be tended means more than just an instantaneous cure. It means care, patience, presence. It means allowing God to meet us in the pain, to hold us in the hurt, and to walk with us through the healing process. Healing is a journey, not a moment. And sometimes it means sitting with the pain longer than we want to. Sometimes it means trusting God even when the wound doesn't seem to change. Sometimes it means surrendering the desire for quick fixes and embracing God's timing. But here's the beautiful truth. You are not alone in your wound. God is near. He sees you. He binds you. He tends you. So I ask, what broken part of you needs His healing touch today? Bring that wounded place to Him. Lay it in His hands. Let Him tend the hurt with love and grace.
Let's linger in Isaiah 61 a little longer. The prophecy speaks directly into the ache of the human soul. He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted. The Hebrew phrase for bind up here refers to a careful wrapping, a mending that is personal and deliberate. Like a shepherd wrapping the leg of a wounded lamb or a parent bandaging a child's scraped knee, this is not detached medical attention. This is intimate care. And the wounded are not just those who have sinned, but also those who have been sinned against, the bruised, the rejected, the abandoned. God is not only concerned with our rebellion, He is profoundly invested in our restoration. Jesus reads this very passage in Luke 4 at the start of His ministry. He unrolls the scroll, reads the words aloud in the synagogue, and declares, "Today this scripture has been fulfilled in your hearing." That means this mission of healing is not just ancient poetry, it is present reality. It is what Jesus came to do, and it is what he is doing still. You may not feel that today. The wound may still throb, the memories may still sting, but God has not forgotten you. He is tending you even now, perhaps in ways you cannot yet see. Sometimes healing begins by allowing the wound to be exposed. We spend so much time covering our pain. We wear smiles over sorrow, we spiritualize our struggles, we numb, distract, or suppress. But unspoken pain is still pain, and hidden wounds cannot heal properly. But when we bring our brokenness into the presence of Christ, something miraculous happens. He doesn't recoil. He doesn't rush us. He doesn't minimize what we've been through. He touches the wound. Think of the leper who kneeled before Jesus in Matthew 8. No one would come near this man. He was considered unclean, untouchable. But when he cried out, "Lord, if you are willing, you can make me clean," Jesus did something shocking. He reached out and touched him. He could have healed him with a word, but he chose to touch, to place love exactly where the pain lived. That is what Jesus does with us. He meets us in the place others won't go. He enters the memory, the wound, the ache. He doesn't flinch. He doesn't flee. He draws near. And his healing is not just physical. It is emotional, relational, spiritual. I remember walking with a woman who had endured years of verbal and emotional abuse. She had come to believe she was worthless because the voices that shaped her had told her so. Her wound wasn't bleeding on the outside, but it had bled into every part of her identity. And then, slowly, through scripture and community and prayer, the healing began. Not fast, not dramatic, but day by day, Jesus spoke a new word over her: beloved, chosen, healed. His touch went deeper than the insult. His truth rewrote the lie, and the wound began to close. That is the power of being tended by God. But you have to come as you are. You have to bring him the real wound, not the polished version, not the story you've edited to make it sound less painful. The real thing, because God cannot heal what you pretend isn't broken. So again, I ask, what broken part of you needs his healing touch today? Don't hold back. Don't wait until you feel worthy. Come now. Come honest. Let him begin the healing work only he can do.
Ashes are what's left when everything else is gone. They are the remains of the fire, the aftermath of loss, the evidence that something once vibrant has now been reduced to dust. And when life leaves us holding ashes, it's hard to imagine anything growing again. But God does his best work in the ashes. Isaiah 61:3 speaks directly into that place. To give them a crown of beauty instead of ashes, the oil of joy instead of mourning, and a garment of praise instead of a spirit of despair. This isn't poetic exaggeration, it's the promise of transformation. God doesn't just remove the ashes, he plants in them. It seems backward to us. Who plants in dry, dusty remains? Who looks at a field of ruin and says, "Yes, this will bloom"? God does, because he sees what we cannot. He sees the soil beneath the sorrow. He sees potential in what we thought was wasted. And maybe that's where you are right now, standing in the ashes of something that mattered. A relationship that burned out, a dream that dissolved, a season that ended without warning. You're trying to make sense of the silence, the stillness, the loss, and the question whispers, what now? Jeremiah 29:11 answers that whisper, not with cliché, but with certainty. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you a hope and a future.
This was written not to the comfortable, but to the exiled, to people who had lost home, safety, and identity, to those standing in the rubble. And God says, "Even here I have plans. Even now I have hope for you." Hope planted in ashes. That's the gospel. The cross, Rome's instrument of death, became the seedbed of resurrection. And that same Jesus stands with you in your ruins, not offering empty words, but planting something new. But here's the question that only you can answer. What new thing is God calling you to plant in your ashes? You don't need to have it all figured out. You don't need to know the full harvest. You just need to put one seed in the ground, one prayer, one act of faith, one step toward life again. Because ashes are not the end. They are the beginning of something God is preparing to grow.
I once read about a burn center that treats the most severe injuries imaginable, deep, life-altering wounds that take months, sometimes years to heal. One nurse described the process with reverent honesty. She said the hardest part is not the initial burn, but the treatment that follows. Every day the wounds must be cleaned, the dead skin removed, the dressings changed. It's agonizing. But without it, infection sets in. The wound can't heal. Pain becomes permanent. It hurts to heal, she said. But it's the only way to get your life back. That phrase rings true not just for bodies, but for souls. Spiritual healing is not passive. It's not painless. God tends our wounds with compassion, yes, but also with truth. He exposes the infection of lies we've believed. He scrapes away the bitterness we've clung to. He washes us with grace even when it stings. But all of it is mercy, because He wants us whole. Psalm 147:3 says, "He heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds." Not just once, not just for others, but for you. For the wound you've carried quietly, for the part of you that flinches when touched, for the place you've protected so long you forgot what peace felt like. That's where His healing begins. And here's the miracle. Once tended, your wound becomes a witness. The scar doesn't vanish, but it no longer bleeds. It no longer defines you. It becomes a testament to the healer, a reminder of grace, a story that speaks life into someone else's pain. Isaiah 61 paints that picture powerfully. God gives a crown of beauty instead of ashes, the oil of joy instead of mourning, a garment of praise instead of a spirit of despair. That's not just restoration, it's transformation. But it begins with surrender. So today, maybe the bravest thing you can do is stop pretending, stop covering, stop waiting to feel better first. Bring the wound, bring the fear, the shame, the regret. Bring the part of you that still winces when touched. Lay it before the one who already bore your wounds on the cross and who still carries the scars as proof of His love. He will not shame you. He will not rush you. He will tend you. So I ask once more, what broken part of you needs His healing touch today? Whisper it if you must. Cry it if you need to, but don't hold it back. The healer is near, and His hands are ready to bind what's broken. Your healing begins not when the wound is gone, but when it's given to Him.
Isaiah 61 doesn't just talk about beauty instead of ashes. It talks about planting in the ashes. The passage continues, "They will be called oaks of righteousness, a planting of the Lord, for the display of His splendor." Did you catch that? From ashes, God plants oaks. Not flowers that fade, not grass that withers. Oaks, strong, deep-rooted, enduring. But oaks don't grow overnight. They take time. They require seasons of unseen growth. And they begin with something small, a seed buried in what seems lifeless. That's how the kingdom of God often moves, quietly, slowly, deeply. Jeremiah 29 is often quoted, but rarely considered in full context. God's people were exiled in Babylon, mourning what had been lost, their temple destroyed,
their identity shaken. And in that place of disorientation, God gave them a strange command: build houses and settle down, plant gardens and eat what they produce. Jeremiah 29:5. In other words, plant where it hurts. God didn't tell them to wait until they returned to Jerusalem. He told them to begin again right there, in the foreign land, in the aftermath of loss, in the place that didn't feel like home. That's what it means to plant in ashes. To take the soil of grief, disappointment, or delay and say, even here, I will trust. Even here, I will believe that life can grow again. But how? How do we plant when our hands are tired? How do we hope when everything feels scorched? It starts with a seed. Sometimes that seed is a simple prayer. God, I don't see the future, but I trust you with today. Sometimes it's a conversation, a journal entry, a phone call. Sometimes it's choosing to forgive, or to show up, or to dream again. Every act of faith in the ashes is a planting. And no planting goes unnoticed by God. He sees every seed. He waters it with mercy. He tends it with patience. And though the growth may be slow, the harvest is sure. I once knew a woman who lost her child in a tragic accident. For months, the only thing she could do was grieve. The pain was paralyzing. But slowly, God invited her to begin again. She started volunteering with a ministry that served grieving mothers. Just one day a week, one conversation at a time. That was her planting. And over time, what grew from that place was not only healing for her, but hope for others. Her ashes became a garden. Her sorrow became a sanctuary for many. Friend, God never wastes pain, but He also doesn't rush the process. He invites you to plant, not because the ashes are beautiful, but because He is. Because the same hands that formed you from dust can form something holy from the ashes you now hold. So I ask again, what new thing is God calling you to plant in your ashes? It might seem small, it might feel scary, but don't underestimate what God can grow in surrendered soil.
There's a true story that comes out of the aftermath of Mount St. Helens, the volcanic eruption that devastated parts of Washington state in 1980. For miles around, everything was covered in ash. Forests reduced to stumps, lakes choked with debris. Wildlife disappeared. Scientists thought it would take decades, maybe centuries, for life to return. But within months, they saw something unexpected. Green. Tiny shoots of wildflowers pushed through the gray. New saplings began to rise. And deep beneath the ash, seeds that had lain dormant for years were awakened by the heat. The eruption that had seemed to destroy everything had actually made the soil more fertile. Out of ruin, renewal. That's what God does with our lives. When the fires of loss or failure leave us with nothing but ash, it feels final. It feels like all hope is gone. But God is already working in the soil. He's already preparing something beneath the surface. The very heat that scorched your plans can soften the ground for new purpose. Isaiah 61:3 doesn't just promise beauty from ashes. It says God gives us a crown of beauty, a divine exchange. Not just relief from sorrow, but transformation of it. Not just an end to mourning, but oil of joy. Not just an escape from despair, but a garment of praise. This is not sentiment, it's gospel reality. Jesus wore a crown of thorns so you could wear a crown of beauty. He bore the ashes of our sin so we could be clothed in righteousness. And His resurrection proves that what looks like the end is often just the beginning. But you have to plant. You have to trust that something can grow again, even if you don't feel it, even if you don't see it yet. That first seed of prayer, of faith, of obedience is the start. So don't wait for everything to be perfect. Don't wait until the grief is gone or the questions are answered. Take the seed of your surrender and bury it in the ash. God will meet you there, and He will grow something you never imagined. So I ask once more, what new thing is God calling you to plant in your ashes? Don't fear the fragility of the seed. Don't despise the grayness of the ground. Just plant. Because the God who breathed life into dust can raise gardens from ash.
Roots grow in silence. You don't see them forming, twisting, reaching deeper into the earth. But they are the secret to strength, the hidden anchor, the part of life that nobody applauds, but that sustains everything above the surface. And so it is with grace. It often begins quietly, subtly, beneath our striving, beneath our shame, beneath the soil of our brokenness. But if we let it, if we trust it, grace will root us in something unshakable. Ephesians 3:17 through 19 paints that picture in radiant detail. That Christ may dwell in your hearts through faith, that you, being rooted and grounded in love, may have strength to comprehend what is the breadth and length and height and depth. Paul's prayer isn't just for faith, it's for roots, for a life that isn't easily swayed, for a soul so deeply anchored in the love of Christ that nothing can uproot it. But many of us are still trying to plant ourselves in performance. We live like grace is a reward, not a gift. We measure our worth by how well we've behaved, how much we've accomplished, how together we appear. And when we fail, we retreat. We question God's nearness. We assume His love has conditions. But grace doesn't grow in the soil of self-sufficiency. It grows in surrender. Romans 5:1 through 2 says it so clearly. Therefore, since we've been justified by faith, we have peace with God through our Lord Jesus Christ. Through Him, we have also obtained access by faith into this grace in which we stand. We stand in grace. We don't earn it. We don't climb toward it. We are placed in it by Christ. And yet standing still is hard for many of us. We want to prove. We want to move. We want to produce. But grace calls us to root. Deep, steady, quiet. It calls us to trust that what Christ has done is enough, that we are already accepted, already loved, already secure. But roots don't just form automatically. They grow in hardship. It's when the winds blow and the soil shakes that the roots go deeper. And maybe that's where you are today, feeling the storm, the shift, the uncertainty. And God is saying, let your roots grow here. So I ask you, in which broken area do you need to root more fully in grace? Where are you still trying to prove yourself? Where are you still striving instead of receiving? Grace is already there, waiting to hold you, strengthen you, ground you. All you need to do is stay.
Paul's language in Ephesians 3 is deliberate, rooted and grounded in love. To be rooted is to be nourished. To be grounded is to be stable. These are images of permanence, of being held by something larger, deeper, stronger than yourself. But this rooting doesn't happen in ideal soil. It happens in real life, where wounds ache and questions linger. And it happens, most of all, in broken places. God doesn't ask us to root in our performance. He asks us to root in His presence. Romans 5 reminds us, through Him we have also obtained access by faith into this grace in which we stand. Did you catch that word? Access. Grace is not earned, it's accessed, not through effort, but through faith. It is a place we are invited into, a reality we are rooted in, a home we can never be evicted from. But still, we wander. We wander back to shame, to comparison, to old patterns that whisper, "You're not enough, try harder, prove your worth." And we forget we are already standing in grace, already loved, already justified. That's why roots matter, because when lies come, it's the roots that hold us. When storms hit, it's the roots that keep us standing. When we feel unworthy, it's the roots that remind us we were never worthy to begin with, and yet we were chosen.
God doesn't plant us in grace as a trial run. He plants us in grace as his permanent dwelling place. But rooting takes time and pain and trust. I remember a young man who came to me after a season of failure. He had drifted from church, from discipline, from faith itself. He was ashamed, exhausted, unsure if he could start over. I asked him what he believed God thought of him in that moment. He hesitated, probably disappointed. We opened Romans 5 together. We read of a God who justifies the ungodly, who doesn't wait for you to improve, but meets you while you're still weak, who doesn't tally failures, but welcomes prodigals. And slowly the roots began to sink. He didn't need a fresh start. He needed to come home, to the grace that never moved. Maybe that's you today. Maybe your faith feels shallow. Maybe life has yanked at your roots. Maybe shame has whispered that grace is for people who do better. But grace isn't a reward. It's a place, a person, a posture. It's where you stand, even now, even here, especially here. So let your roots grow. Let them reach deep into the soil of Christ's love. Let them settle into the truth that you are fully known and still fully embraced. Let grace hold you when nothing else can. And again, I ask, in which broken area do you need to root more fully in grace? Because that's the place God is planting something unshakable.
There's a tree in South Africa called the shepherd's tree. It doesn't look like much. Modest branches, a rough trunk, not especially tall. But it holds a secret underground. Its roots run deeper than any known tree on Earth, reaching down more than 200 feet in search of water. Through scorching heat, brutal droughts, and shifting sands, the shepherd's tree stands firm. Not because of what's seen, but because of what's buried. Its life is hidden, anchored, rooted. And that's a picture of the believer grounded in grace. You may not look impressive to the world. Your life may not bear flashy fruit right now. But if your roots run deep into the soil of God's love, into the sustaining stream of His grace, you will endure. Ephesians 3:17 says it plainly, being rooted and grounded in love. That's your strength. That's your stability. That's your nourishment. Not the applause of others, not the success of your plans, not the security of your feelings. Grace. The kind of grace that holds you when you can't hold yourself. The kind that whispers, "Still mine," when failure screams, "Not enough." The kind that anchors you in Christ when everything else in life is shifting sand. And from that root, life grows. Paul prays that we would have strength to comprehend what is the breadth and length and height and depth, and to know the love of Christ that surpasses knowledge. That's what happens when you root in grace. You begin to grasp the love of Christ not as theory, but as reality. Not just for the world, but for you. Deep, personal, unshakable. And that kind of love transforms everything. It changes how you pray, how you forgive, how you persevere. You no longer strive for approval, you live from it. You no longer fear the storms, you're rooted beneath them. You no longer panic when fruit is slow to grow, you trust the process beneath the surface. So today I invite you, not to run faster, not to try harder, but to go deeper. Sink your soul into the soil of grace. When shame rises, let grace answer. When fear grips, let grace settle you. When failure strikes, let grace hold you. Because the deeper the root, the stronger the life. So one last time, in which broken area do you need to root more fully in grace? Don't rush past the question. Sit with it. Pray through it. And wherever that place is, let that be the ground where God grows something eternal. He's not finished with you. He's planting something strong. So dig deep, root down, and stand forever on grace.
We all need mercy. Not once, not occasionally, daily, hourly. Mercy is the air the soul breathes when it realizes it cannot survive on merit alone. But mercy must be reached for. That's the image given to us in Hebrews 4:16.
Let us then with confidence draw near to the throne of grace, that we may receive mercy and find grace to help in time of need. This verse isn't for the victorious. It's for the needy, for the weary, for the wounded who don't know how to fix themselves but still dare to reach. God doesn't wait for you to clean up before you come. He doesn't ask for perfection. He invites proximity. Come close, he says. Draw near. But for many of us, mercy feels out of reach. Not because God has moved, but because shame tells us we shouldn't. Shame whispers, "You've asked too many times. You should be over this by now. Why would God listen this time?" And so we stay back, desperate but distant. Friend, hear me. That is not the voice of the shepherd. That is the voice of the accuser. The one who died for you is also the one who intercedes for you. He is not weary of your need. He is drawn to it. That's what makes mercy miraculous. God, who is infinitely holy, draws near to the deeply broken, not with wrath, but with welcome, not with punishment, but with compassion. And here's where it gets even more powerful. The mercy you receive is meant to flow. Luke 6:36 says, "Be merciful, even as your Father is merciful." The mercy that touches you is the mercy that's meant to reach others, which raises a holy question. Who around you is waiting for your reach of mercy today? Not your advice, not your judgment, your mercy. Because once you've truly tasted God's mercy, you cannot help but extend it. Not just to the easy, not just to the grateful, but to the same kind of people you were when He found you, wounded, messy, unsure, in need. Mercy is not weakness. It is the very strength of God flowing through broken vessels.
Hebrews 4:16 offers something radical. Let us then, with confidence, draw near to the throne of grace. Think about that. Confidence. Not hesitation, not guilt-ridden groveling, not fearful flinching. Confidence. But how can we, broken as we are, dare to draw near to a holy throne? Because this throne is unlike any other. It is not a throne of condemnation. It is a throne of grace. And seated on it is one who understands. Hebrews 4:15 reminds us that Jesus, our high priest, is not distant from our struggles. He was tempted in every way, yet without sin. He knows what it is to weep, to hunger, to ache. And because of that, we can approach, not with fear, but with freedom. But to approach, we must reach. We must stretch past the shame that tries to tether us. We must move beyond the lie that says, you should be past this. We must come again, and again, and again. Because mercy is not a one-time pass. It is a continual well. Jesus showed this in His ministry. Again and again, people reached out for Him. The woman with the issue of blood reached through the crowd, believing that if she could just touch the hem of His garment, she would be healed. And she was. The blind men cried out, "Son of David, have mercy on us." And He stopped for them. The leper, the centurion, the sinner at the Pharisees' table, they all reached. Not with eloquence, not with credentials, just desperation. And Jesus never turned them away. Because mercy doesn't require you to have it all together. It only requires you to come. But here's where the gospel takes it even further. Once we've received mercy, we become vessels of it. Luke 6:36 is not a suggestion, it's a summons. Be merciful as your Father is merciful. To be a Christian is to be a channel of mercy, to extend the same grace you've received, to move toward others not with judgment, but with compassion, especially when it's hard. I once knew a man who had been deeply hurt by a friend, betrayed in a way that seemed unforgivable. For years he held on to bitterness, certain the pain was too deep to release. But God began to soften him, not through guilt, but through grace. The more he meditated on the mercy he had received, the more it humbled him, until finally he forgave. Not because the other deserved it, but because God had forgiven him. That's what mercy does. It changes how we see people. We begin to see others through the lens of our own redemption. We remember the pit we were pulled from, and we extend the same hand. So let me ask again, who around you is waiting for your reach of mercy today? It might be someone close, a spouse, a child, a friend. It might be someone hard to love. It might be someone who hurt you. Mercy doesn't say they deserve it. Mercy says, I've been shown it, and I will pass it on. Because every time we reach for mercy, we reflect the heart of our Father.
There's a powerful story from the life of Corrie ten Boom, a woman who survived the horrors of a Nazi concentration camp and later traveled the world speaking of God's forgiveness. After one of her talks, a man approached her. She recognized him instantly. He had been one of the guards at Ravensbrück, the very camp where her sister had died. He didn't recognize her, but he reached out his hand. "Fräulein," he said, "I've become a Christian. I know God has forgiven me for the cruel things I did, but I would like to hear it from your lips as well." Corrie froze. Memories flooded her mind. The pain, the fear, the loss. And then, she reached. With trembling hand, she extended mercy. She took his hand, looked him in the eye, and said, "I forgive you, with all my heart." She later said it was not her strength that forgave him, but Christ's strength flowing through her. The mercy she reached for at the throne of grace became mercy she offered in the hardest of moments. That's what mercy does. It changes the story. Hebrews 4:16 promises that when we draw near, we will find mercy and grace to help in time of need. That word help is nautical. It refers to the ropes that hold a ship steady in the storm. Mercy is your anchor. It's your support. It's what steadies your soul when the winds of regret and the waves of shame come crashing in. And Luke 6:36 reminds us that mercy isn't just a gift to receive, it's a mission to live. Every day we are surrounded by people who are quietly drowning, people carrying wounds we can't see, people desperate for just one drop of mercy. You don't need to have the right words. You don't need to fix their pain. Just reach. Reach with kindness. Reach with patience. Reach with presence. Reach with grace. And as you do, you will reflect the heart of your Father, the God who reached for you when you had nothing to offer but need. So I ask you one last time, who around you is waiting for your reach of mercy today? Don't delay. Don't overthink it. Just move toward them in love. Because mercy is not a theory. It's a touch, a gesture, a reach. And every time you extend it, heaven smiles.